Okay, picture this. You are looking at a completely empty tray. Like there's absolutely nothing on it.
Right, just a blank space.
Exactly. Now, how do you explain to a bird that this absence of anything is actually a tangible mathematical value?
I mean, you don't. And I think that is the absolute wildest part of the research we're getting into today. You don't teach it to them at all.
You just wait for them to figure it out.
Basically, yeah. You
Yeah.
wait for the bird to get so frustrated with your questions that he just, invents the concept himself and then explains it to you.
It is so crazy. Welcome to this deep dive, everyone. Our mission today is to completely dismantle your understanding of what a smart brain physically looks like.
Yeah, we've got this fascinating stack of historical accounts and cognitive research to go through.
And it is all centered on this famously grumpy African gray parrot who could literally do math.
Which is just, I mean, the juiciest piece of intellectual gossip I have read all week.
Right. And from there, we're going to arrive at a twist that will fundamentally change how you view like the tiny bugs buzzing around your kitchen right now.
It really just flipped the script on everything.
So let's set up the core friction here. Because most human toddlers, right, they cannot reliably grasp the mathematical concept of zero until they were, what, at least 3 or 4 years old?
Yeah, about 3 or 4. It's a really complex idea for a kid.
But the research we're looking at shows a bird with a brain the exact size of a literal walnut, figured it out entirely on his own.
And to truly understand the magnitude of that breakthrough, we really have to look at the rigid scientific dogma this bird was up against. Like, we have to rewind to 1977.
Okay, set the scene. What did science think about birds back then?
Well, the consensus at the time was heavily influenced by these lingering behaviorist theories. Basically, the assumption was that true, complex thought-processing language, manipulating abstract ideas that required a massive, highly developed mammal brain.
Like chimpanzees or dolphins or us.
Exactly. So birds were viewed as essentially biological tape recorders, feathered robots.
Just mimicking sounds to get a cracker. Like, Polly want a cracker, and that's it.
Right, just running a fixed biological script, nothing going on upstairs.
Which is so arrogant of us, honestly.
It really is. But then, the scientist, Irene Pepperberg, she walks into just a standard pet store in Chicago.
Not a fancy breeder.
Nope, just a random pet store. She buys a random 1-year-old African gray parrot. She names him Alex, which hilariously stands for Avian Learning Experiment.
That is such a scientist thing to do.
I know, right? And she sets out to prove that the architecture of intelligence might not look the way we always assumed.
And Alex almost immediately refuses to play by the rules. I mean, over the years, he learned to identify more than 15 different objects.
Which is a huge vocabulary for a so-called tape recorder.
Exactly. And he wasn't just pointing at them or making a generic squawk. If you handed him a block, he would calmly and accurately describe its color, its shape, and what it was made of.
Yeah, he could actually tell the difference between wood, metal, and plastic.
Which requires an incredible level of cross-referencing.
Yeah.
He's actively analyzing the physical stuff in his environment, right?
Right, he's selecting the correct sounds to communicate these very specific, distinct variables. He is literally categorizing reality.
And that leads to one of my absolute favorite moments in the source material, the Bannery incident.
Oh, this part is so good.
It's amazing. So someone handed Alex an apple for the very first time. He had never seen one, ever.
So he has zero vocabulary for it, no word for apple.
None. So what does he do? He just invents a word.
Just makes one up.
Yeah. He examines this apple. He notices the inside texture is like kind of similar to a banana, but the outside is red like a cherry. So he calls it a bannery.
He mashed them together.
Yes, bannery. And later, there was another time where he wanted a nut, and the researchers, they refused to give him one.
Oh, I remember reading this. He gets mad, right?
He gets mad, and he actually starts sounding the word out phonetically. Like a kid learning to read. He goes, duh.
It is a phenomenal display of cognitive flexibility.
But wait, let me play devil's advocate for a second, because I know people listening are probably thinking this. How do we know the bannery moment wasn't just a mistake? Like an accident?
A phonetic misfire.
Yeah, exactly. Animals mash sounds together all the time.
Yeah.
How does the research prove this was intentional synthesis, rather than just a random noise he happened to get a treat for.
Well, that is exactly the pushback the scientific community gave Pepperberg at the time. They were like, no, it's just operant conditioning.
Wait, explain operant conditioning really quick.
It's basically a closed loop of behavior.
Yeah.
Stimulus, fixed response, reward, like training a dog to sit for a treat. They argued Alex was just doing a trick to get a reward.
But the data says otherwise, right?
Totally. Because sounding out a word syllable by syllable or intentionally combining a banana and a cherry to describe a new thing that requires an understanding of structural logic.
Oh, wow. So he's treating language like Lego blocks.
Exactly like Lego blocks. He's treating them as modular. He recognized that sounds weren't just a magic trick to get food. They were tools.
Tools he could take apart and put back together.
Right, to communicate entirely new desires that he had never been trained on.
Okay, so if he is treating language as modular, it makes me wonder how far that goes. Can a brain that small build math concepts the same way it builds words?
Well, the sources highlight his math skills specifically, and the crazy part is that they were completely unprompted.
Yes. Picture the scene in the lab. Irene Pepperberg is running a test with a much younger parrot, a bird named Griffin.
Right, Griffin is the new guy.
Right. And she's trying to get Griffin to count sounds. She's using a little clicker, so she goes, click, click.
And Griffin does what?
Nothing. Griffin just stares at her, completely silent. So she tries again. Click, 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 click. 4 clicks.
Now, the lab dynamic here is crucial to note because Alex is not part of this experiment. He is just hanging out in the background.
He's not even involved. But suddenly, from all the way across the room, Alex just yells out, 4.
Oh my God.
Pepperberg is stunned, obviously. So she decides to test him. She does 6 clicks. And from across the room, Alex shouts, 6.
He was literally eavesdropping on someone else's math homework and shouting out the answers.
The ultimate annoying classmate. But what is actually happening in his brain there?
What Alex is demonstrating is cross-modal counting. He is taking an auditory input, this invisible, fleeting sound of clicks in the air, and translating it into a spoken abstract number.
That feels like a massive leap from just looking at 3 blocks and saying 3.
It is a huge cognitive leap. But he could do the block thing too. The research notes he could look at a totally messy tray of objects and count them accurately.
Oh, and he could sort those plastic fridge magnets, right? The Arabic numerals.
Yeah, the numbers 1 through 8. He understood that the physical symbol of a 4 meant the exact same thing as 4 physical blocks sitting on a table.
Which is wild. Connecting an abstract symbol to reality is super advanced. But the researchers, they wanted to push him even further, didn't they?
Yeah, they wanted to test his working memory.
Okay, is that where the jelly bean test comes in? Because reading the sources, that test seemed to elevate him from just like a smart pet to something entirely different.
The jelly bean test is legendary.
So they would hide 1 jelly bean under a cup, then 2 jelly beans under another cup, and 1 under a third cup. Alex couldn't see them all at once.
Right, they are hidden.
But he accurately tracked the hidden amounts, and when asked, he stated the final total was 4.
Which is mind-blowing.
I really need you to explain the mechanics of this, because we've all seen a dog track a ball hidden under a cup. Why is Alex tracking jelly beans scientifically a bigger deal?
Okay, think about what your own brain has to do to solve that problem. If you count stuff on a table, your visual system is doing the heavy lifting. The data is right there in front of your eyes.
I can just point and count.
Right. But in the jelly bean test, Alex had to encode the first number, store it in his short-term memory, and then actively update that number with invisible information when the next cup was loaded.
Wait, so he's doing addition in his head.
He is holding a fluid mathematical equation in his head, entirely in the abstract, while the physical evidence is completely concealed from him.
Oh, wow.
When a dog tracks a ball under a cup, that's just object permanence, knowing the ball still exists.
Okay, that makes sense.
But Alex is using his brain's central executive system to run an algorithm on objects he can't even see anymore.
He's maintaining a running tally in the dark.
Exactly. And for a tiny bird brain to spontaneously allocate the brain power to do that is staggering.
Which perfectly sets up the absolute climax of this deep dive. Because doing math in the dark is one thing, but naming a number that literally doesn't exist, that is a whole different universe.
It really is. This brings us to the tray test.
And this might be one of the most significant interactions in the history of animal cognition.
Hands down.
So Alex is looking at a tray. On this tray, there are 2 yellow blocks, 3 blue blocks, and 6 green blocks. The researchers have run variations of this question with him like a million times.
Right. He knows the drill.
He knows it too well. Today, Alex is visibly bored. He's completely over it. The researcher asks, what color is 3? Meaning, which color has 3 blocks?
And Alex stubbornly answers, 5.
Knowing full well there is no group of 5 on the tray.
He is just being intentionally annoying.
Totally. The researcher asks again. He says 5 again. So the exasperated researcher decides to throw a trick question at him, a little gotcha moment to snap him out of it.
They're like, okay, buddy, let's see how smart you really are.
Exactly. The researcher says, fine. What color is 5?
Now remember, his visual system is scanning the tray, registering a complete lack of input for the number 5.
And Alex, without missing a beat, immediately replies, none.
It gives me chills. It is a breathtaking moment of cognitive improvisation.
And here is the context that makes this so wild. He had only ever been taught the word none to describe 2 objects that were the exact same size.
Right, he was taught it meant no difference.
Yes, no difference in size. But in that fraction of a second, he completely repurposed the word to mean 0.
He gave an absence a mathematical label.
It's like looking at an empty chair versus writing the word empty on a piece of paper and taping it to the chair. But I want to pause here and really dig into the neurology of this.
Yeah, let's get into the weeds a bit.
Because the sources make a huge deal out of the fact that human history went thousands of years without the concept of 0. I mean, the Romans built the Colosseum, but they didn't have a 0 in their numerals.
Which sounds crazy to us now.
Right. So what is actually happening in a brain that makes nothing so incredibly hard to process?
Okay, so it comes down to sensory input versus abstract representation. When you look at an empty space, your visual system just registers a lack of stuff.
It just sees nothing.
Right. The brain's default setting for that is just null. It doesn't require any active processing to see nothing. But 0 is not just null.
What's the difference?
0 is a defined mathematical placeholder. It is a specific position on a number line that you can manipulate. You can add to it, you can subtract from it.
Oh, I see.
To conceptualize 0, your prefrontal cortex has to actively override your eyes telling you null. It has to build a synthetic category for a void and then treat that void as a real, tangible thing.
You have to completely detach your logic from what's actually in front of you.
Precisely. Which is why the Romans were entirely practical. If there are no apples, there is no need to count apples. Why invent a symbol for a void?
Wow. It took centuries of human civilization to formalize 0 because it takes so much brain power.
Immense cognitive friction. And developmentally, human toddlers don't have the prefrontal cortex maturity to reliably override that sensory data until they are 3 or 4 years old.
They might recite the numbers out loud, but treating nothing as a quantity just doesn't compute for them yet.
Exactly. So for a walnut-sized bird brain to independently synthesize this concept basically out of sheer boredom, it forces us to ask a very uncomfortable biological question.
Which is, how on earth does a skull the size of a golf ball have the processing power to do that? We have to address the insult bird brain.
It is an insult entirely rooted in our own human ego.
Totally. We just assumed that volume equaled capacity.
We thought, well, our brains are huge and have this massive folded cortex, so that must be the only way to build a smart brain.
If you have a small brain, you must be dumb.
But then scientists actually mapped the physical structure of bird brains, specifically the avian pallium in parrots and crows, and the architecture is completely different than ours.
They found out their brains are packed incredibly densely with neurons. Like ounce for ounce, a parrot has double the neuronal wiring of a primate brain.
The miniaturization is honestly remarkable. They are missing certain filler cells, and the connections between their neurons are much shorter.
So the signals don't have to travel as far.
Exactly, which allows for incredibly rapid processing in a tiny physical space.
The sources use such a great analogy for this. They say the parrot brain is like a suitcase packed by an absolute pro.
Oh, I love the suitcase analogy.
It makes so much sense.
Yeah.
If you take 2 identical suitcases and a regular person packs one, it holds a normal amount of clothes.
Right, lots of dead space.
Yeah. But if one of those internet packing hack experts takes the second suitcase, they roll everything up, they eliminate every single pocket of dead air, and they fit double the items into the exact same spatial footprint.
A large parrot literally packs the cognitive hardware of a mid-sized primate into a tiny bird skull.
It completely redefines what is required for intelligence. Neuronal density matters way more than overall volume.
So you read that and you start to accept this dense walnut theory.
Right, it makes logical sense. Small space, but tightly packed hardware.
But just when you wrap your head around that baseline, the research throws in a complete curveball that shatters even the dense walnut theory.
Oh man,
The honeybee.
The sesame seed brain. This is where my mind actually exploded. A brain the size of an actual sesame seed.
This is where all the biological assumptions truly fall apart.
So the researchers wanted to see if an insect could understand these same abstract concepts. Obviously, you can't ask a bee to talk to you.
Right, no bee vocabulary.
So they taught bees the concepts of greater than and less than. They used these visual cards with different groups of shapes, and they rewarded the bees with sugar water when they flew to the correct card.
So they learned to always fly to the card with the lower number of shapes.
Yes. And then came the ultimate test. They showed the bees a card with one shape on it and a completely blank card, 0 shapes.
And the crucial detail here is that the bees had never been trained on a blank card?
Never. It was completely new.
So what did they do? Did they just get confused and fly away?
No, they didn't. They correctly flew to the blank card. They placed 0 on the less than 1 end of the number line.
Are you serious?
Yes, they calculated the sequence. The research even shows bees can add and subtract small amounts. I'm in genuine shock over this.
It's unbelievable.
The whole first half of our deep dive was built on marveling at the dense walnut brain. But the sesame seed brain just flips it all upside down. How is a brain with barely 1 million neurons running an algorithm for a void?
It suggests we have fundamentally misunderstood how neural networks even operate. A bee relies on distributed processing and microcircuitry.
It doesn't even have a prefrontal cortex to override its eyes.
Exactly, yet it still solves the conceptual problem of nothing. It challenges the very core of our mammalian bias.
It means that grasping 0 might not require a massive biological hard drive at all.
It might just be a fundamental property of how even the tiniest neural networks process the universe.
It proves nature can solve complex cognition in so many diverse, miniaturized ways. We really need to get off our pedestal.
Evolution isn't just building bigger computers. It's writing incredibly efficient code for microscopic hardware.
Wow. Okay, as we wrap up this deep dive, I have to say the tone of our sources takes a very quiet, almost emotional shift here.
Yeah, it really does.
For 30 years, Irene Pepperberg worked alongside Alex the Parrot. They changed the landscape of cognitive science together. And every single night, when she would put him in his cage, he would recite his exact bedtime routine.
A routine that really speaks to the emotional bonds these animals can form.
He would look at her and say, "You be good. I love you. See you tomorrow."
Every night.
Every night. And in September 2007, at the relatively young age of 31, because African greys can easily live into their 40s or 50s, Alex said those exact words. "You be good. I love you. See you tomorrow."
And he unexpectedly passed away in his sleep.
Yeah.
The silence he left behind in that lab is profound. I mean, the bird who gave us a word for nothing left behind this inexplicable void in our pursuit of understanding animal minds.
And what hits the hardest is the timing of it all. At the time of his death, he was right in the middle of a new series of tests.
Tests exploring that exact concept of none.
He was still pushing the boundaries. He was still teaching us.
It really leaves you with this chilling, kind of beautiful thought to mull over.
Yeah, it does. If physical brain size isn't the requirement for conceptualizing nothing, what does that mean for everything else around us?
Think about it. If a honeybee with a sesame seed brain can spontaneously do math on a blank card.
Right. What other abstract concepts are the animals around us quietly understanding right now simply because we haven't thought to ask them the right questions yet?
It makes you wonder how many different types of intelligence are looking back at us, just waiting for us to figure it out.
So the next time you look at an empty tray or blank piece of paper, just remember the bird who looked at nothing and saw something profound.